So just recap: protein, amino acids, build stuff, fat, essential fatty acids, vitamin storage, and neurotransmission. So what do carbs do? Well, carbs all break down into glucose in the body, whether it's honey, potatoes, corn, veg, even fiber, all breaks down into glucose, and that ends up making quite a bit of energy. Basically is where you do it. So we don't really want to supply our body with lots and lots of energy that we can't use straight away. And what supplies the most energy? Well, that's sugar. Well, sugar is a carbohydrate that gets broken down into glucose molecules. Starch is a carbohydrate that's broken down into glucose molecules. Honey is a carbohydrate, gets broken down into glucose molecules. So, I mean, that's what carbohydrates do. And fiber is a carbohydrate. That is indigestible. That goes all the way through your body, going back to what happens to your body. It starts at the top of your body in your mouth and comes out at the bottom there. Right. So go back to this. And then we're going to talk about obesity. Why do people put on a little bit of fat? So when you eat carbohydrates, you have this huge spike of blood sugar, and insulin comes out and it tries to take the sugar levels down again. Protein has a smaller effect, and fats have an even smaller effect on our blood glucose and insulin, to the point where it's negligible. So here we go. What happens when you put some carbs in? Well, your blood has tons and tons of molecules of glucose. And this is where I want to give you some context. How much blood glucose do we need to function? Well, we need around 1 teaspoon in 5.5 liters of blood. 5.5 liters. So I want you to sort of imagine how much fluid that is, and imagine just 1 teaspoon of sugar. 1 teaspoon of sugar makes you not diabetic, just makes you normal. To be pre-diabetic, you need 1.25 teaspoons of sugar. There are 9 teaspoons of sugar, 9 in a can of Coke. So it's a lot of fluid. Okay, if you can imagine that 5.5 liters of blood and 1 teaspoon of sugar, and imagine then what effect a can of Coke is going to have in the body. Well, insulin needs to come to the rescue, because insulin is the hormone that controls where your blood glucose levels go, and its job is to bring blood sugar down if it goes too high. So I want you to think of like insulin is like a delivery driver that takes glucose around and around. So in your bloodstream, it is detected that you have high levels of blood glucose. So the pancreas will secrete insulin, and insulin will open up the cells and make sure that they can take in glucose. And it will go to your muscle cells, it will go to your liver, and it will go to your fat cells. And this is now where we're going to kick into a little bit about the obesity. So if it goes to your muscle cells, there is a finite storage for muscle cells, and there is a finite storage for liver cells. So irrespective of calories, if you just put in so much carbohydrate, your insulin will have to put it in the fat cells, because it will try the muscle cells, it will try the liver, but eventually it will go into fat cells. That definitely will happen. So if we look at blood glucose levels, so people that are just listening on a podcast, sorry, there is a graph here. But anyway, you want a level in the USA, you want blood glucose to be sort of 70 to 100 milligrams a deciliter. And in UK, it's 3.9 to 5.5. But the point is, in the morning, your blood glucose will start at a particular level, and you want it to just go through the day and not go above 100 too much and not go below 75 too much. If it goes above, then you start to be hyperglycemic. Hyper just means more, basically. There's more sugar than you need, and hypo is when you have less. So you don't want your blood glucose to go up too high, and you don't want your blood glucose to go too low. And that's because that level is toxic in the blood. And that's what insulin does. It tries to keep it in that level. And how do you measure your blood glucose? Well, some people will do it with just a finger prick and a meter like that, and they can measure it. And one of the things I would say is, even if you're not diabetic and you want to biohack a little bit and see what the effects of food are on your body, this is a really good little thing to buy, because you can, if you think, well, porridge can't be that bad, porridge and a banana and some orange juice, how bad can that be? Well, you can test yourself 30 minutes after you've eaten it, an hour after you've eaten it, 2 hours after, and see how you're doing. How is your body coping with that amount of sugar so quickly into your body? You can also wake up and measure your blood sugar and see how your body is doing there, and track it throughout the day. It's quite a good device. There are other things you could measure as well, but it's a good start if you're interested in looking at effects. There are some people that have a continual blood glucose monitor. This lady here is running and she's got the continual blood glucose monitor on her arm. And that's pretty interesting because you can see what's happening through the night. 50% of insulin used by the body is used overnight when you're not eating. And there is blood glucose production from the liver overnight. So the continual blood glucose monitor is really a cool way of looking at what happens to you in the day over a 24-hour period. And you can hook that up to an app. And some people are quite surprised because when you do activity, you can actually see a slight rise in blood glucose because your muscles and tissues are demanding more blood glucose. So it's quite a handy tool when you're working out as well.